Welcome to the Pewtercast. This is our off-season tour as it continues to roll around. Today's date is February the 4th, 2018. I am your host, Brent Allen, joined as always by my co-host, Ren Daxt. Ren, we just got finished watching the Super Bowl, and I don't know how you're feeling about this game. Pats versus the Eagles. How you doing, my friend?
I'm fine. We talked a little bit before the show, and I agree with you that what you said, it's like you're sort of in a limbo as a Buccaneers fan, or as a fan other than the Eagles or the Patriots. I don't know if you had a chance to watch Saturday Night Live last night, but they did a skit where they did colonial times,
the Revolutionary War one. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, did they nail those like fan bases or what?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So. Yeah, it was just like,
we should, what we should do, Ren, is we should make sure we put a link to that in the show notes for today's episode, because I saw that clip out there. Remind me, we'll make sure we get a link. If you guys haven't seen that clip from SNL that Ren's talking about, they basically took the Eagles fans and the Patriots fans and then placed them in Revolutionary War times America, and it was pretty funny. It was really good. So we'll catch a link to that in our show notes.
Yeah, and I think that sort of sums up the rest of America. It's just like, it was a great game, don't get me wrong. It was a lot of fun to watch. I'm happy the Patriots lost, but I'm not happy the Eagles won.
Right. Yeah, it's just this weird mixed bag of feelings. Hey, let me ask you this, just while we're here. This is a football podcast, not necessarily Bucs news right here, but how did you feel about the game? Like, was that – it's the question I was kind of having with my wife towards the end. Like, have we really watched a good football game? Like, I mean –
Oh, because there was no defense?
There was zero defense on either – for either team. Like, none.
Yeah, it was only one punt the whole game.
Right.
But but both teams went for it on fourth down quite a few times, more than a normal football game.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I am. I'm going to say it was because I enjoyed watching it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you want to start getting to semantics as, was it a good football game? Both these teams came in with top 5 defenses. And that's just what happens when you give really good coaching staffs 2 weeks to prepare.
Right.
They're going to find a way to move the ball down the field. As long as you're accurate in today's NFL and you don't shoot yourselves in the foot offensively, which I mean by sacks and penalties, mostly holding penalties. Like, you can pretty much overcome false starts and things like that, 5-yard penalties.
Mm-hmm.
I think about every offense could sort of move the ball down the field as long as you take what the defense gives you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened. It was lots of 7-yard passes that they would turn up and end up, falling forward for like 11 yards. It just and the teams kept making plays. I mean, every time it seemed like the defense sort of got the upper hand,
mm-hmm.
the offense would finally make a play.
Right.
Like that deep pass Amendola. It was like 3rd and 8.
Right.
Page go and end up in scoring.
Did you notice it's like the Eagles didn't really get into the red zone very much, though? Like, despite their point total, they didn't like get into the end zone. Like, they would just pass over it. Did you notice
pass
that?
over the red zone? No,
I didn't. Like, from like the 30-yard line, and at least two of their touchdowns came from outside of the red zone, just passing in over top of it.
Yeah, you're right. So, I'm going to go ahead and say it was a good game. But yeah, there wasn't much defense played. But I don't think the NFL really cares about that, to be honest, because I think, especially for the casual fan, which the Super Bowl has the most of, whatever this score was, what was it, 36-41 or whatever?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a much more enjoyable game for America, / the world to watch than it would be for like a 20-17 game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think the thing that bugged me the most out of anything was those 2 touchdowns that they kept questioning whether or not they were a catch. And you talk about casual fans at large trying to understand why the announcers keep droning on about whether or not this is a catch when at least to the naked eye, looks like that's a catch. You know, you sit there, oh, well, he bobbled it right here in this frame or whatever. You know, like that to me, you know, once again, and I think I tweeted this a few times, you know, the NFL's got to figure out what the damn hell a catch is, you know.
Roger Goodell's talked about that's sort of like his main priority during the off season.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, like, what are you worried about this catch rule? And he's like, I'm very worried about it. Like, they're definitely going to address it.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to come up with some more not so vague, I guess, definitions of what a catch is. Because that bobble and survive the ground stuff is just dumb.
Mm-hmm.
It's just as dumb as when Bert Emanuel, you know, his catch was ruled. Because he survived the ground. The ball didn't even move. It just happened to touch the ground.
Yeah.
You know, so they realized they made a mistake. They'll fix it.
Mm-hmm.
But at least it didn't rear its ugly head in this, you know, in this game. I think that, you know, that Zach Ertz touchdown during the regular season might have been overturned.
Mm-hmm.
But since it was Super Bowl and it was so much on the line, and to, you know, every person who's watched football for more than 2 hours understands that, you know, that's a touchdown. It doesn't matter. He crossed the plane, the ball popped up, you know, and he caught it before it hit the ground. Like everyone thinks that's a touchdown. Mm-hmm. And you have to have some kind of funky rule written a funky way to make it not a touchdown. And that's kind of where we're at this year. But like I said, it'll get fixed.
Yeah. And let's hope they do, because dang it, those are to me that's like just the worst part of football, when there's stupidity like that of minutia that people just can't understand. Like as a fan, that takes the fun out of watching football, when you have something that says, well, he has to catch it and control it and turn into a runner and move here and plant his left foot and stick his tongue out his mouth the side the right way before it actually is a catch. Like it just, you know, it needs to be a lot more simple. But yeah, I tweeted out before the game. I was like, you know, asking me as a Bucs fan, like who I'm pulling for. Would I rather see the Eagles win or the Patriots win? It's like asking me if whether or not I'd rather go to a Nickelback concert with Creed opening or go to a Creed concert with Nickelback opening. Like either way, it's just not going to be a good time. So, but I don't know. I had fun. I had fun watching it, I guess. You know, with people. I think you're right. The casual fan, or not even fan, the casual watcher,
right.
You know, it was probably more fun for them. You know, watching people score, especially people that didn't have a stake in it. But anyway, why don't we get off of talking about the Super Bowl and a couple of teams that we just not only don't care about, we really just don't like. And why don't we get on talking about our favorite team, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Ren? What do you say?
I'm ready.
All right. Well, this is our off-season tour, and this show is really kind of modeled after our Buck in the News show that we do once a week during the season, except here during the off-season, we're stretching it out to once every 2 weeks. It just, the news cycle, things come a bit slower, so we're able to stretch this out so we can catch some stuff. So we do have some things to talk about, and first up, we actually have some transactions to talk about, Ren. And the big news, actually, I guess, really coming out of this as far as the roster signing, the Bucs have signed a new long snapper, a guy named Drew Ferris. He's a former Gator, to the roster. Do you know anything about this guy? What do we know about this this signing of a long snapper to our?
I know nothing about him. I was so what's the opposite of excited? I was so unexcited. Mm-hmm. I was so blasé about what I saw that I would have scrolled across my Twitter line. The Bucs signed a long snapper. Who cares? I guess the most interesting thing is now we have a long snapper, one from Florida, and we have another one from Florida State. I don't think Garrison's going anywhere. Garrison Sanborn, I believe he is, the guy we had last year.
Right.
He's been doing it for like 9 years. He's a pro. They're happy with him. It just might be somebody they're bringing in as a camp body. But you kind of never know, and it could be guarding against injury. But I think it's much ado about nothing. Bringing in a long snapper, but it did happen. So there you go, listeners. That's what happened in transactions this week. This is why we do it every 2 weeks.
Exactly. And I mean, come on. Of all positions, we're talking about the long snapper position. You're probably right that this could certainly be a camp body thing, because you don't want one long snapper doing all of the long snaps for however many kickers they're going to have throughout all of camp and through all of those things. It certainly could be that. But I do want to point out that as of right now, he is the only long snapper on the team, because Garrison Sanborn is an unrestricted free agent.
So there you go.
It's possible. It's possible that this is the guy that they're looking at. I think a knock against Garrison is because this would be his 10th year in the league, I guess it would be. No, actually, I guess he's going into his 11th year, I think it would be. 10th or 11th, somewhere around there. There are certain minimums that the team has to pay him. Right. And I'm not entirely sure what that is. So this guy coming in...
It's not terrible. It's really not like you think, he has to make the veteran minimum. But I looked it up last year, and for a 10-year vet, I think it's $1 million.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which is not like a ton of money in the NFL. Like pretty much just about, I would say, 80% of the league probably makes that. 85% of the league makes that.
Sure.
So, and a 10-year vet, come on. Obviously to you and me and, Joe Bag of Hammers, which we are, it's a tremendous amount of money. But as far as NFL, it's really not that big of a factor in keeping somebody over another person. Mm-hmm. Like the difference might be like $400,000, and really that's like couch change money for an NFL salary cap.
And so I was going to say, his history as far as the league goes is I'm looking at it here. He was in minicamp with the Jets in 2015, so he didn't even make it to actual camp. And then he was with the Seahawks during the summer of 2016, but was out of the league all last year. So that certainly would lead us to say he is not their new long snapper on this team permanently. It could happen, but I don't think that's why they signed him. This would have to be just a camp body situation.
Yeah, he's a backup plan, you know. But if you can get him, you need a long snapper, so you might as well at least get one on the roster.
Yeah.
We can go into the season. At least we know we have a long snapper. We can check that off the list.
Right. That certainly of all positions needs to be like your least worried about position right there. So, all right. Well, so there's that one. There's no really other transactions that are happening out there. One little thing, it's the rumors that I'm sure a lot of people have been hearing. It's kind of a little bit of an older rumor at this point, Ren, but I don't think you and I have had a chance to discuss it yet. But rumors out there being circulated, certainly a lot of Bucs fans are talking about the idea of Aqib Talib and Michael Bennett, both former Buccaneers, are now going to be free agents, I think Michael Bennett's not going to be a free agent, but he might be released by the Seahawks this coming offseason. And apparently Gerald McCoy and maybe a couple other people have been doing a little bit of recruiting, trying to get these guys back into the building. What do you make of all of this? The idea that, bringing Talib back, who certainly has his off the field issues. Certainly, I don't know what he's like in the locker room, but he does come from a pretty good tradition, pretty good background. But then again, so did TJ Ward. Michael Bennett has been fantastic since he's left the Buccaneers.
Yeah, we all, at least it seems at Buccaneer Twitter, think Michael Bennett was the next coming of Jesus as far as defensive tackle / defensive end goes. But he's only got double-digit sacks one time in his career. It happened 2 years ago. 2016 he had 5, and last year he had a good year at 8.5. I think it's going to come down to sort of what kind of person he is. Jason Light talks a lot about getting the right guys, and I'm just not sure Michael Bennett is the right guy. He's always been outspoken, him and his brother, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that. I just have a problem when the outspokenness just sort of goes south, as it seems that it did when he accused the Vegas police of racial profiling, where pretty much everything he said, there was film and video out there that proved it to be not true. And as far as I know, and I haven't done too much research. As far as I know, like no apology has ever been sent, from him to the Vegas police after sort of throwing him under the bus, and everybody jumped on that bandwagon, which they should, because it's I think it's one of the more serious problems that we have as far as law enforcement is concerned, profiling the United States. But then, when it comes out and it proves to be your sort of crying wolf, that I think there should be some repercussions for that. But anyway, I'm sort of getting off track. He's a lot older than he was when he was a Buccaneer.
Yeah.
I
and Talib both.
Yeah, they both are.
Yeah.
So I'm not really sure. They'll both be bridge players, sort of like how Robert Ayers was supposed to be a bridge player to Noah Spence, and Brent Grimes was supposed to be a bridge player to Vernon Hargreaves. I don't think either of them are really the answer. And if we sign both of them, like, we're done. Okay, cornerback. Okay, we're done in free agency at cornerback. Or we signed Michael Bennett. Okay, we're done for defensive line in free agency. We got Michael Bennett. I think they would generate some buzz. Some Buck fans would be happy. But I'm just not sure that they're the players that Bucs fans remember as far as Michael Bennett or Bucs fans think that Aqib Talib is. Like, Aqib Talib only had one interception last year.
Right. And I mean, and maybe not even the ones that they remember, but as far as just ones that they have known in recent years.
Right.
Like with other teams. So
Aqib Talib's been on the TV a lot. He was a Patriot and he was a Bronco. I'm pretty sure he won a Super Bowl with each. So you sort of see him in the postseason, and they get all this coverage during Super Bowl week. And yes, he's a good corner, but given his age and once again, these are both sort of iffy character guys, at least for someone on the outside looking in who doesn't only knows them through reports on Twitter and ESPN and things like that. I don't know these guys personally, but they seem to be in the wrong place at the wrong time more than they should, I guess.
Right.
And I'm just not sure if they're a good fit. So,
yeah. Well, the only counter
and I'm not really one more thing. I'm not really sure how far this recruiting stuff, the Pro Bowl, even goes. I mean, is it just total noise? Does Jason Light and the scouts even listen to that at all? Weigh that in at all?
Yeah.
Or is it just people popping off? I don't mean that in a negative way, but popping off on social media like, hey, Michael Bennett, we were a great pair back in the late 2000s or the mid 2000s. let's hook back up.
Right. I mean, as far as that goes, I think some of that may have more to do with helping. We've often talked about on the show that when you go to sign a free agent, it's got to be a two-way street, right? It's not just Jason Light showing interest, but the player has to agree to come. So some of it may just be trying to get the player to come. And we remember last year hearing about Mike Evans texting with Deshaun Jackson trying to get Deshaun to come. Now, although I think if I remember right, that was Mike and Deshaun's conversation were a little bit after the fact of Deshaun signing or Deshaun making his decision to come here. But I think it might be a little bit more with that. The only counter I would give to you as far as the age thing, it would be Brent Grimes. And Brent Grimes is a little bit of an anomaly.
He's way bit of an anomaly.
Yeah. So, I would do that. The thing about Talib and Bennett both is I wouldn't have a problem if they went out and signed either one of these two guys. But, I think Bucs fans need to caution that I think that you said very fairly, these guys are a little bit older. They're not necessarily the dominant player that we have seen them be at other places anymore, though they probably still have something left in the tank. But these guys are not long-term solutions. These guys are 1-2 years. These are not going to be the guys that put this team over the top. They could be an interesting fit right now, like for this year, maybe next year. But then after that, maybe not. I would much rather see, and I would much rather Jason Light focus more on those free agents that, he could offer a 4 or 5 year contract to, people who could be actually around for quite a while.
And they're out there at both positions.
Sure. So
there's young guys out there.
Right.
That, are up in free agency, especially at corner. There is a bunch of corners out there.
Yeah, and we detailed that a little bit on our show, which has yet to be released. It's coming soon. Of our Love 'em or Leave 'em segment. We talked quite a bit about that. So that will be released probably next week, I think, Red.
What do you make, real quick, back to sort of the Super Bowl, what do you think? Sure. What do you make of Malcolm Butler not playing for the Patriots? Like, he's on pretty much everyone's cornerback free agent board. He's ranked like number 1. Mm-hmm. And he didn't play. And
except for special
the Patriots
teams.
got smoked defensively.
Yeah, I don't know, because it's one of those I make that there's just not enough information. The coach came out and said it's a coach's decision. We put the best 5 guys on the field, or the best people on the field we felt like could win the game, which is coach's speak. Cutter said that before when Doug Martin kind of had a self-imposed suspension at the end of last year or 2 years ago, if you remember that. He wasn't suspended yet. There was no reason for Doug to not go out there and play, except for the fact that between him and the coaches, they decided to sit him, right? The difference being that Butler dressed for this game, and they did put him in for some plays. So I don't know if this was more of a punishment issue, or maybe there was an injury that we're just not knowing about, or a sickness that we don't know about. I do know they showed little clips of Butler like full on breaking down during the what do you call it? The national anthem. Right. So there's definitely something there. There's definitely more to the story that I just don't think we have yet. I'd like to know why he didn't play. I'd like to know what happened. But overall, if we could get him to come to Tampa, I would not have a problem in the world with that. I know a lot of people were kind of on that. Wasn't it last year? Wasn't he up for being released or re-signed last year, and we tried to get him, and he wound up going back?
There was a big the Patriots and the Saints kept talking about a trade with him.
That's right. That's what it was.
And it was like it kept going on for weeks. Like, it was a done deal for like 3 days, and then for 3 days it was, hang on a second, and then 3 days after that, like, I don't think it's going to happen.
Right.
So usually that sort of takes like a 6-hour news cycle, like Malcolm Butler's coming. Oh wait, no, he's not. Okay, and then it's over. But this like took a week. Mm-hmm. It was just like every day. Like, is Malcolm Butler going to the Saints? They're close to a deal. There's a snag. Okay, he's going. No, he's not. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was all last year.
Right. Season. So that's what I make of it. Is we just don't have really enough information yet. And
I agree with you.
So, but I certainly would have some interest in the guy. To bring him to Tampa if that could possibly happen.
Yeah, for sure.
But again, you've got to have that two-way interest, right? And he has to be available too, right? So, be a trade or a release. So,
he's a free agent.
Oh, he is going into this year?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. I wouldn't mind it. Certainly wouldn't mind it. So. All right. Well, we're talking about those guys kind of being recruited. Let's talk a little bit, Ren, about the guy who was trying to recruit them, Gerald McCoy. Gerald McCoy, of course, went in, was voted a captain for the Pro Bowl this year, 6th time in the Pro Bowl, which I think matches Warren Sapp's number. I could be wrong. I think he's getting close. If he's not there yet, he's really, really super close.
I think Sapp had 8.
Was it 8?
He might have tied as far as like the amount he had straight. Hey, I'm looking up right now.
7 times. Warren Sapp went to the Pro Bowl 7 times. Okay. So,
this made 6 for McCoy.
Yeah, so this made 6 for McCoy. But McCoy, as he so often does, and he gets to the off season and. Apparently he picks up his phone again and he starts talking a lot, and people say, you ought to do this, you ought to do that. He gets on a lot of radio shows. He was on not Ian Rappaport, Michael Rappaport's podcast, which if you guys haven't heard that episode, go back and do it. I think he starts right about the 30-minute mark of that show. He was on from a couple of weeks ago. Jordan McCoy also, as part of, I guess, it wasn't Pro Bowl week. Was it Super Bowl stuff, Ren?
At the roller coaster?
Yeah, he was on a roller coaster and was being interviewed by somebody. And
did his Radio Row walkthrough.
Yeah, and they're like, somebody asked Gerald McCoy really hard questions, and it was questions like, what's your favorite pizza topping or something like that. But, Gerald's out there talking, and Ren, I know you were kind of telling me earlier you had some thoughts on Gerald McCoy as a whole and some of the things he's been saying. So I'll toss it over to you, man.
Yeah, I'm not a proponent of getting rid of Gerald McCoy. I don't think Gerald McCoy's garbage. Sort of you see a lot what happens on Buccaneers Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's earned his All-Pros and his Pro Bowls.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't like him. But I do. What I'm trying to say is I understand where the dislike as a diehard Bucs fan comes from for Gerald McCoy, because the more you listen to him talk, it's sort of the same old. I just don't feel like he's the defensive leader that will be able to lead the team, like a Buccaneers defense, to the championship. Like somebody else is going to have to step up and sort of take the reins from him. I think he's an integral part of that defense. I don't think we can do it without him as of right now. But I don't want to say that I don't like Gerald McCoy. Just some of the things he says, it makes me scratch my head about how much he really loves the grind, the day-to-day football. We just talked about the Pro Bowls. And, he's made it no secret that he's chasing ghosts.
Right.
And everybody knows he's talking about defensive tackle position, getting as many Pro Bowls as Warren Sapp did. I think that's very important to him. When he didn't make an All-Pro this year, he tweeted out, okay, got to be better. But we've heard that like time and time again. When, the team sort of jumped on Swaggy Baker the second week, the Panthers game 2 weeks before the end of the season, you sort of heard like Gerald this offseason as well talk about we need to hold people accountable. Well, this guy is a 6-time Pro Bowler, has been in the league for 8 years, and like people that don't play football know this. So when he talks about these things, you sort of scratch your head and like, why are you telling everybody that you need to hold people accountable? Because where has that been since you got here? Where has that been at the beginning of the season? Why was Chris Baker allowed to, sort of run around and not take his job seriously and just let him be one of the guys without any repercussions? So this is when these things start to stack up. I see how people start to dislike Gerald McCoy because he's not the sort of leader that an all-time great usually turns out to be. Like I don't think he loves the grind. I don't think he really likes to practice.
Okay.
Well, it's like when you hear these, you hear like the Tom Brady stories or the Ray Lewis stories or even going further back, Jerry Rice, Walter Payton stories. It's like these guys strive for perfection, and like every rep at practice, Peyton Manning, every rep at practice needed to be perfect. And I went to every single practice last year, every single,
open
training camp. Yeah. Gerald McCoy is not that guy, he, and that's fine, but I don't think you should be holding court every Wednesday by your locker and sort of speaking for the entire team in the defense, because I think it's very important for being professional. And I think that he is a great professional as far as a football player is. But he always has his eye on the future, sort of like Luke Skywalker. Like when Yoda yelled at him, like, you're always looking ahead. On that roller coaster interview, it was very brief, but you sort of heard him say, I want to be known something other than football. And they also, when he was on that Rappaport, Michael Rappaport pod that you talked about, Michael Rappaport goes, hey, are you going to go into, broadcasting? And he's like, no. And then he goes, I'll do it if I have to, which means like I'll do it if, that's sort of like the only paycheck I can get after I do it. But you have to watch film, and like I do that now, and I don't, I don't. Basically, he says I don't want to. So yes, he does watch his film now, but because he feels that that's what a professional football player should do, and he's going to do it. He doesn't love it. He doesn't love the grind. And having these realizations where I got to be better. You hear it like year after year after year, and he keeps trying to, reinvent himself. And I'm not saying that it's his fault that the Bucs haven't gotten to the playoffs since he's been here, but I just don't think he's the type of professional football player a defense can rally behind and make the players around him better. I feel he's very focused on he's going to do his job, and once he's done it, like that's it. Like I've penetrated the backfield. Okay, I've done my job. Where's the other 10 guys? Like where are you guys at? And that's not fair for every play. But overall, I'm saying that I understand why people don't like Gerald McCoy, because he's just sort of not that leader defensively that's going to just do anything it takes to win. He's going to do everything the team asks him to do, and he's going to do it very well, but he's not going to – it feels like he's not going to do that extra. Now, in that referring back to that Rappaport pod again, his workout was insane. Like he talked about his workout. Go back and listen to that. Like it was crazy.
Yeah.
I mean,
because
it was
you
really
got tired
eye-popping.
just listening to him talk about his warm-up.
Yeah. I mean, it was like, it's next level stuff. Like, I've been listening to people, watching football for years, decades. And, I've been following sports my whole entire life. And, I remember the Walter Payton workout and the Jerry Rice workout, and I'm not saying, Gerald McCoy is just the only person on the planet Earth that does this. But of all the workouts I've heard about, this one's up there with like, holy God, that's a lot, And he does it like, every day.
Right.
But so
and by the way, he doesn't take an off season as far as his workouts and his nutrition goes. That was another thing he talked about. He's like, he's talked a lot about it's easier to stay in shape than it is to get in shape. So where a lot of guys will go off their diet or they'll go off their whatever their nutrition plan is, they'll go off, they won't work out as hard. He just keeps it up throughout the entire off season. He stays in season shape like all year long. Is one of the things he talked about. And I personally think I don't have a hard time believing that that's true. Because I, following him on Instagram and things like that throughout the offseason, you often see him go into the gym at like midnight. So it's time to put in work, or something like that. So, well, Ren, do you have anything else? And because I certainly have some thoughts I want to bounce off of there.
Yeah, sure. I just want to finish up I don't want to be viewed as a Gerald McCoy hater. I mean, you can if you want to. It's your decision. But this is not what I'm saying. I think he's a great player. I just don't think, once again, and I guess my biggest thing is that he loves the process. He does the process because it's his job, and he gets paid to do it, and he does it to the best of his ability. He just doesn't love it.
Can you be a good player? Strike that. Can you be a great player and not love the process?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I'm with you on that. Now, here's the thing, and I said this, a while ago. I think it was maybe episode 2 or 3 of the Pewtercast. So, almost 2 years ago now.
Go back and listen at your own risk.
Yeah, they were rough episodes. Anyway, but they're there if you want to go listen to them. You talk about he's not the defensive leader and that somebody else has to step up. And as much as I hate to say this, and Gerald, if you're ever listening to this, please don't take offense when I say I couldn't agree with you more, Ren. Because here's the deal. Gerald is not that kind of a leader. It's just not who he is. Like as a person, it's not in his makeup. And I'll put the caveat to this of this is just me as an outsider looking in, seeing what he does. Gerald has often said that he's the guy who wants to lead by example. And that's fine. There's no problem with being a kind of guy who leads by example, but that is not a person who is an out front, taking the wind in your face, putting the team on your back kind of a leader. What that does is that there's a term, if we want to get back into leadership circles or into leadership theory, it's called leading from the second chair. And that's what Gerald is. And you have to have second chair leaders within an organization. That's what Gerald is. Honestly, quite frankly, that's what Levante David is.
Oh yeah,
they're second chair leaders, and that's fine. And that takes nothing away from their greatness, how hard they work. I'm not going to be so bold as you, Ren, as to say that he doesn't love to practice or to love that, because I can't assign motives. But I will say, and you actually just said this a second ago, you can't take away Gerald's work ethic. I know a couple of years ago, some people were trying to knock a hole in Gerald's work ethic. You can't do that. You can't take away from how good Gerald McCoy is. And there is something to be said. Like, listen, he just got nominated to the Pro Bowl. He's there for a sixth time, and he was named by his peers as a captain, which means they at least respect his body of work and what he's been able to put out there on the field. And these are the guys who are going against him. So, or watching, these are the guys that know what they're talking about and know how to elect one of their own to give them honors, which we may talk about the process of giving honor to former football players in just a little bit that don't have anything to do with this. But you want to be that second cheerleader. That's fine. When Jameis came to him last year and said, "Hey, Gerald," I'm sorry, let me back up even further than that. Remember when Jameis first came to the team? And there was all these rumors about, Jameis is going to come in and he's going to take away the leadership from Gerald McCoy, and Gerald McCoy is getting all. People were like, look at him, he's walking around the circle, he's not even listening to Jameis, and he's muttering something, and he's all pissed off. And turns out it's Gerald just being Gerald, because he's a religious guy and he's out there praying for his team. It's not that he was mad, that's who. Gerald was happy to give the face of the franchise to Jameis Winston. He was happy to offload that. So,
actually, his first year, I remember Gerald McCoy telling Jameis to hey, just sit back for 1 year here, young buck, and you don't have to lead this team. And Jameis was like, nope, it's kind of what I do.
And that's, by the way, that right there is a perfect example of where I say Gerald's not a leader, because leaders don't say that. Right. The way that Jameis came in and said, nope, that's not what I do, that's not how we act, that's being a leader. That's a sign of leadership. When you come in, and that's not bullying or throwing your weight around, it's just, no, that's not who I am. And at this point, I think I'm really just talking about the makeup of a person. And there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. I tend to be more of a second chair leader than an out front kind of a guy. So, maybe it's just I'm recognizing one of my own, But, I agree with you. As far as the holding court thing, I get it. I know what you're talking about. Now, having been there and seen this one time, some of it really might be just, Ren, that because Gerald has kind of been that face of the defense and the quote-unquote leader of the defense, sometimes you have leadership thrust upon you, and right. That can be a good thing if you rise to it. But if you're not that kind of a leader and it's thrust upon you, you have to figure out ways to deal with it. And I think that might be a little bit about what we're seeing here. And it's, I don't know that I think Gerald, if given his druthers, if he could walk into the locker room and maybe one person comes up and asks him some questions, or this person comes up and asks him some questions, he'd much rather have that. But he's going to get the crowd that shoots around him. And that's just the media guys. He can't help that. So, he puts some sort of control on it and says, listen, I'll talk to you at this time. Everybody wants to come talk to me. That's fine. But other than that, leave me alone. I think that might be what that is. Now, I don't know. That's just my guess from having kind of seen how that whole thing works.
I have my own theory on that.
Sure. We'll go for it. What do you think?
Well, I've talked about how, chasing ghosts and his legacy and, wanting – I really think he wants to – he's trying to make it to the Hall of Fame. I think that's one of his goals. Mm-hmm. And to make it to the Hall of Fame, as we've seen with, took Terrell Owens how many years to get in the Pro Football Hall of Fame because he was just a jerk to the media. You've seen it in baseball when Eddie Murray from the Orioles never talked to the media. They sort of blackballed him for a while. I think it's a little bit like what you said. For a good 4 or 5 years, Gerald was sort of like the only star on the team. It was him and a bunch of bag of rocks. But I think Gerald knows that it's important to build relationships with the media, being accessible, always trying to give them something to write about. And you've heard writers talk about this, the beat guys. Like, we like Gerald because, he'll always give you something. He'll give you. Sorry?
No, I was saying exactly what you're saying. He'll always give you something. Yeah.
Yeah, he'll always give you something. Yeah. But I think one of the reasons, and maybe the biggest reason he does it, is to build these relationships with the other media members, so when it comes to his time, it doesn't hurt to be thought of as the guy that was always there for the people that are going to vote you in. I have no proof of that.
Right. Yeah.
But when you hear him like, hey, you didn't make the Pro Bowl. Okay, got it. Got to be better. Well, no shit. You didn't make the Pro Bowl. Of course. Everybody's got to be better. Like, even Aaron Donald won defensive MVP. He still thinks he's got to be better. It's just him, the acknowledgments of sort of when he gets slighted just kind of just rubs me the wrong way. And it rubs me the wrong way because I think has this overall view of this is one of the ways to get himself to where he wants to go, which I think ultimately in the end is a gold jacket.
And I'll be honest with you, Ren, I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with anybody who wants to become part of the Hall of Fame. And, if some of that involves schmoozing the media, fine, schmooze the media. But as far as what it actually means for the team and how he interacts with the team, I am in agreement with you, and I think it's a wrong thing to say, well, Gerald McCoy is the leader of the defense, or he is the leader of this team. He's the
leader of the press conferences.
You could call him a lead follower, or a first follower, and a second cheerleader. Yeah, I think that's kind of the more sexy term for it. But you're right. Somebody else has to step up. Now, whether that's going to be a Quan Alexander or somebody who's not on the team yet, because I don't think there's anybody else at least on the defensive side of the ball outside of Quan Alexander who could potentially step up. And I'm not even sure that it's Quan Alexander, that's going to carry the weight and the cachet and the personality to actually rally the guys and lead the guys, because Gerald's going to go out. No one on that team's going to outwork Gerald on that defense. Like, they're going to have to come up to his level. Nobody, you talk about his quickness off the ball or whatever. Gerald is going to put in the work. He's going to put in the game film time. He's going to do all the things that he needs to do because he's chasing a ghost or he wants to get in the Hall of Fame. I don't have a problem with any of that. Ultimately, he's trying to win a Super Bowl championship, because I guarantee you, Gerald's not going to get into the Hall of Fame unless he gets a couple of 10-sack seasons going on and they win a Super Bowl. Like, he has to add that to his resume. I don't care what he's doing. I don't care how nice he is to the media. It's not going to happen if those things don't happen. So, but as far as the guy to rally the troops, and when Jameis came to him last year and said, hey, Gerald, you need to speak up more. You need to be more vocal. You need to go do that. And Gerald's like, well, my quarterback came to me and said he needs me to do this, so I'm just going to do that. You're watching somebody try to force themselves to do something that is not in their makeup. That isn't. And how long did that last?
Very long.
Yeah, it didn't last very long because that's just not who he is. And I would say, if anything else, it's time for them just to say, hey, this isn't me. Now, this doesn't mean that Gerald doesn't get his picture up on one of those big banners outside of Raymond James Stadium. This doesn't mean that Gerald's not one of the marquee people, that Gerald's, on that he doesn't get his name on one, or his picture on one of the souvenir cups that they make every single year, or he should absolutely get all that. But to sit back and keep calling him the leader of the defense, and by the way, it doesn't mean he doesn't get to be a captain anymore either, because he can still be a captain. But to be the quote unquote leader, the guy who the other guys follow, He doesn't have to be that guy. And this is less of a slam on Gerald. And in fact, it's in no way, shape, or form a slam on Gerald. It's more as a call out to everybody else on that defense, or to whomever is going to come into that defense. Somebody else is going to have to step up, because it's not Gerald. He's just not that guy.
Yeah, and I also don't have a problem with him trying to make it to the Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a pet peeve of mine, and you've heard me say it a few times in previous pods, is don't pee in my head and tell me that it's raining.
Mm-hmm.
Don't sit there and tell me, well, I do this because, I'm trying to help out the writers and they got a job to do. And, I am one of the leaders of the team. And let's face it, Jared's very smart. He's very well spoken. Like I said, he always does give the media something. But don't tell me you're doing it because, it's your job as a professional for a football player, when I think, and like I said, I have no evidence, I think, a reason more you're doing it might be 51% to 49%, but the 51% is because that it's going to help you with your goal down the future. It's don't sit there and look at me and only give me half the story. Mm-hmm. And like I said, it's pure speculation, but that's what sort of rubs me the wrong way. I have no problem with Gerald trying to make it to the Hall of Fame, but at least be honest about it if that's what he's trying to do.
Yeah, and I think we just might be on opposite sides of the table as far as the why he's doing it, but I think we're certainly on the same spot as far as what that means for the team itself and where to go forward from there. So, speaking of going forward, let's go on to another topic here. A couple of big pieces of news, though, that we do want to get to before we get out of here. Which one do we want to do first? Why don't we go to the Well, you know what? We were just talking about a player wanting to make the Hall of Fame. Let's talk about that. Or rather, shall we say, a player who did not make the Hall of Fame. As we record this, we know that once again, John Lynch, for the 5th year in a row, has been, I don't know if the word is snubbed or not candidated for the right way, or I don't really know what's going on, Ren. But unfortunately, John Lynch is not making the Hall of Fame, and he absolutely should be in the Hall of Fame at least one day. But this year is not that year. If we've been listening to Ira's podcast, Ira Kaufman, his podcast, he's been detailing the last couple of weeks about what his speech is going to be. Said he had a pretty good speech, but made no bones about it. It was going to be a tough road to hoe to get John Lynch in there, given what else was going on this year, and this was not the year. So, how do you feel about this, man?
It's going to make me seem like I've gone off the rails this pod, because I have some strong feelings about this as well.
Ren hates everybody. No,
it's just like crazy Ren episode, crazy Ren. First off, I'm going to start by saying this, and this is probably going to catch me more flack than anything else, is I don't really think John Lynch is a Hall of Famer.
You can send emails to ren@thepewtercast@gmail.com. Oh, wait, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's all right. Do I want him to get in the Hall of Fame? Absolutely. Do I think he deserves it? No, I really don't. And it's sort of like the biggest argument you get for him is he was that third piece that you needed for that defense to be great. It was always Sapp, Brooks, and Lynch.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think John Lynch would have been good as he was if it wasn't for Derek Brooks or Warren Sapp? With the other two, there's no doubt. Derek Brooks would have been Derek Brooks no matter what defense he played in, no matter what team he played on. Warren Sapp, no matter what defense he played in, no matter what team he played on. John Lynch, I don't know. I don't think so.
That's a fair question, and I guess what I think of when I think about that is the guy we were just talking about, Gerald McCoy. Because presumably what you're saying is with John Lynch. Well, I guess you could take that in two ways. Either John Lynch would have been as good of a player as he was, or he wouldn't have been he would have been as good as he was, but not on as good of a team, and therefore would not have had the recognition, or he just wouldn't have been as good as he was without those two guys, and therefore just not been a really good player. I would tend to think of with that, it's probably more of the former. He would have been the same good player, just not as recognizable. Because when we saw John Lynch go over to the Broncos, he was still a dominant player. Now
and that is the biggest argument to, I guess, my side of it is he did go to 4 Pro Bowls as a Denver Bronco.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so you can that flushes my whole argument down the drain. If I was on that side, that's what I would use.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't, you look at his numbers and he stacks up, and it's if you have to start making arguments of things you can't sort of see in a stat sheet to get into the Hall of Fame, I just don't think you're worthy. I mean, you've heard this phrase thrown around for the last couple years. It's the Hall of Fame. It's not the Hall of the very, very good.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think John Lynch was very, very good. Now, having said all of that, I don't know. Do you have anything to say? Finish off.
I am very much in the camp of John Lynch should be in the Hall of Fame. One of the things we do hear from Ira a lot, and I guess it bears out, is that the Hall of Fame voters don't really tend to like safeties. And I don't know if that's just because the nature of the position doesn't lend itself to big flashy numbers. It doesn't lend itself to the sexiness of it. But when you talk about the Hall of Fame, some of it, I think of the word fame as notoriety, as people that are famous, right? And to me, John Lynch is a name that is very recognizable and very famous for for anyone, certainly through that mid 90s to the mid aughts, the mid 2000s. That to me, plus, like you said, very successful with 2 different teams. He's now showing success as a GM with a third team. To me, if there's anything with John Lynch of why people might kind of push him off a little bit right now, is because he's still active in the league. Like, we still haven't quite seen what all he can do to justify him being in the Hall of Fame. Although I think he's already done enough. There still could just be more. If he turns around the 49ers program and sends them back and wins another Super Bowl, I don't see how you don't make John Lynch in the Hall of Fame.
Because they're 2 different categories. You can't count what he does in the office part of the 49ers or wherever he, finishes his front office career and tack it on to the player. They have a category for that. It's called contributors. That's why Bobby Beathard got in.
Great. Then put him in 2 different spots. I mean, I don't care. I'm just saying that as a person, for wherever he winds up, that I think one just plays into the other. But to me, I think John Lynch is a clear Hall of Famer because, I understand your point of what you're saying of would he have been as great as he was without Derek Brooks or Warren Sapp. I don't know. But the fact is he was great, and for his time and what he was asked to do then, and I can't sit here and tell you what his stats rank up against other people who are playing in his era and of the same.
I saw his and Brian Dawkins stats stacked up against each other, and that's why I always heard Ira like the stats don't play out. They don't. Like, they play the exact number of games, and Brian Dawkins smokes him in every category. Just smokes him. It's not even close.
Well,
and how you talk about how the Hall of Fame. I think that was sort of something that is. I just don't think there were a lot of great safeties that have come out, because next year I will bet as much as you'd like that Ed Reed's going to get in first ballot, and the year after that, I'm pretty sure Troy Polamalu is going to get in first ballot.
Yeah,
because you know why? They're Hall of Famers. So that's it. I mean, of course I want Lynch to get in. I'm not openly, publicly banging the drum that I don't think he should get in. I want him to get in.
You just don't think it's a slam dunk as many other Buck fans do.
It should be, yeah. It should be that much of a slam dunk. You see this outrage, oh my God, how's everyone so stupid? I'm yeah, I get it.
Okay.
That's thanks. That's the best way to put it without getting killed. Like I understand why.
Okay.
Now on to Ira Kaufman.
Uh-oh.
I don't even know where to begin with this. There's just so many things like mulling around in my head. And I've sort of talked about it before.
Mm-hmm.
I want to preface all of this is like I really don't like. I'm not in the room, so I don't know what Ira's speech was like. There has been reports that the guy who did Brian Dawkins' speech was sort of a slam dunk. It was just after he went, it was going to be sort of no question that Brian Dawkins was going to get in.
Mm-hmm.
I think the most disturbing thing this year is that John Lynch is now going backwards. He didn't even make the final 10.
Mm-hmm.
It's like everyone does their speech and they cut 5 out. And John Lynch was one of those 5. Last year was the perfect storm for John Lynch to get in. And when Jason Taylor gets in as a first ballot Hall of Famer above you in a class it's that weak. Well, they got to put in 5. And they boils down to, well, Jason Taylor will probably get it anyway. I don't think he's a first ballot guy, but I like him better than John Lynch. Like it's not looking good for John Lynch. And you've mentioned our Kaufman's podcast, and he sort of gives a little insight about how it goes. Mm-hmm. I don't like the politics. I don't like, hey, I'll vote for this guy, that guy. It reminds me a lot of Congress. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of shady things going on in there. But
somebody calling all of the voters the night before saying, hey, put my guy in.
Yeah, I'm sure there's lots of that stuff, where, they're sitting around, the bar drinking whiskeys and talking about, I got this guy coming up, I'll throw a vote to you for, this year, but, you got to give me your vote in 2 years and, things like that. So I think it happens, but I just don't think Ira Kaufman's the right guy for the job. And it's not that maybe he doesn't give a good speech. I just don't think his sort of lovable schlub shtick that he does, he kind of comes off like, oh, that's just Ira. Everybody loves Ira. He's harmless. Mm-hmm. The problem is Ira is not like people aren't voting for Ira. Like they're voting on the person he's presenting. Mm-hmm. Derek Brooks and Warren Sapp, they were slam dunks. I've sort of said in the past, I could have got him in. You could have got him in. Anybody listening to this podcast could have got him in. Like you could have stood up and went, yeah, I'm representing Warren Sapp, and then sat down. He was getting in. like there was nothing to debate about that. Mm-hmm. And you hear on Ira's podcast about how it's just as the years go by, and now he's starting to catch some heat. Now it seems that he's really only starting to put in the effort that I feel he should have put in like year 1 with John Lynch when he was in the room to be able to present with him. Going to outside sources. He kept mm-hmm. talking about that Barry Sanders quote. He just got that last year, after 3 times failing, I think. Yeah, 3 times failing? I think so. It was either 2 or 3. And, and as the losses started to count up, well, now he starts to pick up his gait. Look, I think it's a dirty game that's being played. Mm-hmm. I just don't think Ira wants to play it. And if Ira doesn't want to play it, then I don't think you're really the right person for the job. Because if you can't if you're not going to play the game and not get John Lynch in, because you've missed your window. Like John Lynch may get in as a senior member, may get in like you talked about earlier as a contributor. He's going to have a real hard time getting Rondé Barber in. Because that is a super niche. Talk about mm-hmm. not want to put safeties in the Hall of Fame. Hey, we got a guy that played nickel corner most of his career. Well, we don't have any of those in the Hall yet. Well, here's some stats that don't stack up against other cornerbacks.
All the more reason.
Yeah, but a guy that played at that position, which none of you know about because he was the best. So it's going to be hard.
Right.
It also really got under my skin that Everson Walls got in this year because Ira told the story once again on his podcast mm-hmm. that some guy called up and was talking like basically giving the the Everson Walls speech where this is last year blah 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 mm-hmm. and even at the end of the conversation the guy who was calling on behalf of Everson Walls told Ira and Rondé Barber doesn't need to get in right now. Like, and Ira knew that guy has called all, where you would like make the assumption, connect the dots, that this guy is calling all 48 of these voters, or 46, and making sort of the same speech, and he didn't do anything about it. It's so. I just don't feel he's the right guy for the job. Nothing against him, because it's you can't really hate on Ira. You just see, he's just kind of hey, what's going on? Hey, he's just kind of, he's the dude. He's just kind of the guy, So he, like you said, he's harmless. He's not gonna hurt anybody. He's not malicious towards anybody. But it's like he's just not the right guy for the job. He's sort of like the mouse in the snake pit. It's just not. It's not going to work when it comes down to when it gets hard. It doesn't seem that Ira sort of has the gumption or the grit to sort of get down in the mud and wrestle with these guys and push his player through to make it happen.
Well, I will say this, and this might get me in trouble with all different kinds of fans and all different kinds of camps. I'm going to agree with you that I don't think Ira is the man for the job. But I'm also going to say this. I don't think Scott Reynolds at PewterReport.com is the man for the job. In fact,
I don't either.
I don't think Greg Allman is the man for the job, or Rick Stroud is the man for the job, because the problem that I have with all of this is the way that people get voted into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
is the method. And that's more of what I would like to see changed. Is it just does not make sense to me why the media, the people who are covering these guys, those are the guys who are voting and have the vote and actually make the decision of who gets into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I just don't get that. I don't get why that's not a committee of current members who are in the Hall of Fame of who's going to let who they're. These guys know who's good. These guys know who should be in and who shouldn't because they played against them. Or they can at least recognize good football when they see it. And these guys, most of them, and I would say most of them, watch football across the board. They watch all the teams, or they they're aware of what's happening out there, that they see what's happening. The media guys don't do that. They follow their team, maybe one or two others. They hear the big names, and that's it. Like, there's a reason they have to get in and go make presentations, because they're educating the other people about it.
Right.
And I don't want to sit there and be like, okay, so who's this Rondé Barber guy? Tell me why I should vote for him. Like,
I know his name, but that's about it.
Right. Like, this should not be a campaign that you're building. Like, we're nominating our next congressman or city councilman. Like, this, we're talking about the Hall of Fame. This needs to be, we either we turn this into like an America's Got Talent type voting situation where the people get to text in their vote and they can vote up to 10 times from landline if they want, or let the people who are in the Hall of Fame, let them have a nominating committee and a selection committee, or however that works, and change up how the people get put into the Hall of Fame. And does it have to be limited to 5 people? Or maybe it doesn't. Maybe it does have to be limited. I don't know. I don't care. To me, the process of how the Hall of Fame people get nominated, and that's not a slight necessarily against Ira. That's not a slight against Scott, who I know he's. I don't know that Scott's campaigning to take that. There's a thing. I don't even know how Ira gets the spot. When does it come time for the voter thing to move on to somebody else?
He retires.
So it's like a lifetime appointment or a career time appointment?
Yeah, as long as he has a job that's writing for a local media in the Tampa Bay area, he gets to keep it. I've talked about that. The only reason he really has the job, and I'm not saying he wasn't the best choice at the time, but Ira's even said this, it was basically workplace nepotism. Mm-hmm. The guy at the time, I can't remember his name. I want to say Tom Caron, but I'm almost positive that's wrong. Mm-hmm. Ira even said they wanted to keep it in the Tribune at the time before it went under and went defunct. Mm-hmm. And so Ira was sort of the next guy in line. So that's how he got it. Then the Tribune folded, And, you know, that was like one of the first things I thought of when the Tribune folded. I was like, holy shit, like what's going to happen to our Hall of Fame vote? And honestly, I think it should. If I had to pick, I would pick Rick Stroud.
Stroud, yeah,
I think he. You know,
you certainly can build the strongest argument for Rick Stroud. For sure.
I mean, he's dead on logical. He doesn't like get too up, get down. I think he's well respected. He doesn't act like a buffoon. You know, so just things like that. So that's how he got it. So. From what I understand, he tried to go to the St. Pete Times, and St. Pete Times wouldn't hire Ira Kaufman, which honestly, and once again I have no evidence on this, has had nothing to do at all sort of with Ira's writing ability or wanting him on the staff. I think the Times were hoping that the Hall of Fame vote would have to get passed to the Times, you know, and now the St. Pete Times could talk about how they have a Hall of Fame voter on their staff. Once again, I can't prove that. But what else also really bothered me, at the end of Ira's last pod, he already knew the 5 people he was voting for. Like he said it at the end of the pod. He's like, here are my 5 votes. He hasn't gone in the room yet. Like I think one of the guys, the last guy he said was Tony Baselli, which I have no problem with that. He's the only person ever to be drafted, be the first round draft pick ever of 2 different organizations. He was the first round draft pick ever for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and he was the first pick ever for the Houston Texans. It was like one of those supplemental draft things that you will find in the book The Yucks. So, but how many games do you think Ira Kaufman watched Tony Baselli play?
I wouldn't even begin to guess. I don't know what Ira's
5,
football
10
watching
10,
thing is. I don't know. Does football does Ira spend all day Sunday watching, you know, the 16 different games that we have throughout the week?
No, he's watching the Bucs games because he has to be there.
Right.
When he was the Trib, he traveled. He was, you know, and now he's with Joe Bucs fan. He doesn't always get to travel, but he has to watch the game because he has to write a column on it tomorrow.
Sure.
So, you know, it's I can't follow the logic when Ira's going in there talking about how he has to sell the room on John Lynch, and on the other hand, he's already made his 5 choices without hearing any of the speeches yet.
Now, to be fair, though, and you may have heard something different than what I heard, but when I heard Ira name off the 5, the question was, as it sits right now, who are your 5? And he gave the caveat to say, as it is right now, not having heard anything, this is who I'm voting for, but that could change. That's what I heard. Now, it might have been something different that you had heard, but that's what I heard.
Obviously, it was something different that I heard. So thank you. So anybody listening, just scratch that whole last argument I had.
And we don't edit, so it's in the show.
That's very fair and logical. I get that. Yeah. So I apologize for going off about having your votes already made before you get in the room. Because for some reason, I didn't hear that part. I don't know. Maybe I omitted it. Maybe I was so fired up already about the whole entire thing that I heard what I wanted to hear.
You threw your phone.
Hope I could.
Damn it, Ira! No.
Damn it, Ira! Stomping around the kitchen, walking in circles.
Still going to listen to your podcast when it comes out next week.
Just like chain smoking cigarettes outside, getting angrier and angrier.
You know, and far be it from me to criticize any of these guys. The only criticism that I would have, and the big thing is, we haven't, as far as I know right now, we have yet to hear from Ira about any of this.
And that was another thing.
I'd like to hear from Ira. Like
he did it last year.
Yeah.
He ghosted everybody. He just didn't say anything about it. I've seen John Lynch tweet.
Right.
I haven't seen Ira tweet. And then he even talked about the poor guy, the poor Philly writer who didn't get Dawkins in last year, just got beat up badly by the fans. And then Isbitz at the end of Ira's pod last time, the one I misheard, I hope I didn't mishear this, started calling people idiots. He's like, hey, if John Lynch doesn't get in, I don't want these idiots out there saying it, start blaming Ira. Well, who the fuck am I supposed to blame? It's such a thing nowadays to do a preemptive strike. It's like, well, whoever doesn't like this, they're haters. Or I'm just not allowed to like it. It's like I'm allowed to think that Ira did a bad job without being an idiot. I'm allowed to disagree with you. That also, maybe that's why I didn't hear it right, because that ruffled my feathers too.
Damn it, Steve.
It was just like it's like he knew that Lynch wasn't going to get in this year, so he's like, "Hey, everybody, if Lynch doesn't get in, you're an idiot if you say anything bad about Ira or negative about Ira." It's like, what? It's
I will say,
I can have my opinion.
Yeah, I will say from listening to that, it really did feel like while they never said it, it felt like maybe behind the scenes that there had been some discussions of going, I don't really know that Lynch is going to get in. We've got a good argument, but there's a lot of things going against him this year, and they detailed out a lot of the trouble. They're only going to put 5 in. Well, it turns out they put in. I want to say it was 6. Was it 5? Because there was 8. There's 8 that went in all together. There's the old guy, and then there's the contributor.
There was 2 old people.
2 old guys, and then the contributor. Okay, so then 5 of the people who got voted. So he was running through. Well, Ray Lewis is going to be there. Urlacher's in there as well. Is he a first round guy we don't really know, or first ballot guy we don't know? And XYZ. So I think in the end it came down to there's only 2 slots left. Is Lynch going to be one of them? Maybe not. But it's an interesting thing. My biggest complaint to the whole thing, as I've said, is I just don't like the process. I don't think that the media
200%.
should be in there voting for the Hall of Fame. And to me, that's nothing against Ira, and that's nothing against any of the other people. I agree with you. Outside of Ira, it would seem to me Rick Stroud would be probably the next best person. I think Scott might. I'd be interested to see what Scott would do from Pewter Report. Scott Reynolds. I think that'd be. I would be most interested, I think, to hear his speech. I'm interested to hear all these guys' speeches. I wish they recorded them and put them out. But I think Scott could do well. But I think Rick's probably the next. It's the one that makes the most sense to me. Should Ira ever pass that down?
I think Scott Reynolds would have an excellent speech, as I do Rick Stroud would have an excellent speech. Mm-hmm. The reason I picked Stroud over Scott Reynolds is because he works for a newspaper and he travels. He knows he has more relationships with the guys in the room.
Listen, when you're a guy that Ian Rappaport and Adam Schefter retweet and they give their insider news based off of what you say, which is something that Rick Stroud does. I've never heard Ian Rappaport say, Scott Reynolds at Pewter Report broke this story.
Right.
I've never heard him say that. And that's nothing against Scott. That's just to say Rick Stroud, I think, has more cachet. His name recognition is a little bit higher, which actually just gives him a little bit more credence. People will listen to him in the current system, which I think is a bad system, but still it's the system we got to play in. You want, being a well-known reporter, a well-respected reporter that has a newspaper behind you, it's just going to give you an edge over somebody who honestly just writes for a website, albeit a very good website, and albeit the fact the guy, and I'm talking about Scott now, who's been covering the Bucs since 1952 apparently. If you listen to their podcast and put any credence in that, but
he's been covering the Bucs, I think, longer than anybody except for Scott Smith, the senior editor and writer for Buccaneers.com. Of all the guys that are there now.
Sure. But anyway, so yeah.
Sure.
All right. All right. Well, I think we have beat the dead horse of the Hall of Fame vote. Do you have anything else on that, or shall we move on to our last piece of news here for today?
I just wanted to say that I agree with you that the system is the real big problem.
Yeah.
I like the idea of, and I don't think all the I like the idea of Hall of Famers being the people who vote. I think it should be. I think people should volunteer and go, yes, I want to put in the work and I want to do this. But I also think there should be sort of you can't be too old. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like if you got in the Hall of Fame and you're still alive and you got in like in 1978, even if you do follow football, I just think it's a good idea to sort of make it like 10 people, 15 people, 20 people. Just keep it within like, I don't know, 15, 20 years of the people that are coming in. you know?
Sure.
So they've heard the stories. They've been in the locker rooms. They might have played against them, you know? So you're constantly refreshing the pool as sort of like, you know, the last, okay, well, it's 21 years. You got to give up your seat. And so it, you know, keeps bringing in new blood and people are excited to do it. And you don't sort of have these long chains of, hey, remember in 93 when I threw my vote? I need it this year, you know?
Well, that becomes a real easy thing to me in my brain of just you set up rules of saying, okay, you make it into the hall. You have to wait, let's say 2 years after that before you can become a voter. And when you become a voter, let's say the votership is made up of 20 people, 20 people who are currently in the Hall of Fame. But you can only be a voter for 5 years. Right. And then you have to rotate off, and it's got to be somebody new. So you kind of get elected by your peer group to serve for a 5-year term of new. And what you do is you have, let's say out of that 20, you put them in groups of 5. So every year you've got a new group of 5, you know, who just kind of rotate through. So, and, you know, then you have to sit out for 2 more years before you can jump back in or something like that. You know,
I don't think you should get to jump back in.
Or you don't get to jump back in. That's fine. That's fair too.
Because there's always 5 people that are going to come in.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, every year, like,
that
there's going to be 5 new people to pick from.
Right. That makes a whole lot of sense. So, you know, that's a real easy way to do it. But you're right. That eliminates some of that. Hey, I voted for your guy, so you can vote for me now, or you know, it at least eliminates that. But to me, it just makes sense that the current Hall of Fame people. And by the way, Ira, if you're listening to this or somebody else, who's not, but whatever, if somebody wants to come in and make an argument for why it should be to the media as opposed to the people who are in the Hall of Fame, shoot us an email to thepewtercast@gmail.com. I'd love to know your thoughts on that because I just don't understand it. All right, moving off of that, let's move the show forward a little bit.
Or if you think I'm full of crap and I should shut up, you know, we'll have you on the show or send an email and we'll talk about that too.
We can do it. We've got
because with the information I have, I think I'm pretty solid.
There you go. All right, one last piece of news, Ren. Got news. It's a little bit old at this point, but still, we haven't talked about it. A little bit of a coaching change. Not a major coaching change. This would just, I think this would qualify as a
new defensive coordinator.
Nope. But we
new
have
offensive line coach.
No.
New defensive line coach.
Guess again. We are sticking with Jay Hayes teams. And George Warhop. Nate Katzer is still going to be with special teams, at least as of right now.
I'm out. I don't know.
Todd Monken, the offensive coordinator / wide receivers coach, is now going to be our official offensive coordinator. How about that? And some guy we've never heard of. He sounds like a middle schooler from when I was teaching middle school a bunch of years ago. Skylar Fulton is the new wide receivers coach.
I already thought Todd Monken was the offensive coordinator. No, I know what's going on with this. First, for Skylar Fulton, from what I've read, he was a player that Dirk Cutter coached when he was at Arizona State. He's been sort of the guy. If you ever been to a practice or a training camp, he's been one of the guys that sort of like moves the bag around between the drills and has like the crayon cone on his fingers and tries, you know, obstruct the view of the quarterback as they're running routes and stuff. He's basically been like he's been an offensive assistant. And this is sort of the next step up is like, okay, now you're the wide receivers coach. Going into that room, he looks a lot like Mike Evans. Like he's the same size. He's got a beard. He's got tats all up and down his arms. Like from a distance, if you put like, oh my God, I forgot Mike Evans' number. What's Mike Evans? 13?
Yeah.
Okay. God. Oh man, that's terrible. If you put like a practice jersey 13 on him and threw a helmet on him, like from 20 yards, you'd be like, oh, look, there's Mike Evans. Like the same size, same build, all that kind of stuff. So there's familiarity there. But what's going on with Todd Monken, as you know, Brent, is now he doesn't have to be in the wide receivers room. You know, he doesn't have to coach the wide receivers in OTAs and training camp and practices. He can sort of walk around and pick and choose where he wants to jump in. Plus, this gives him a lot more time to come up with an offensive game plan. And because he doesn't have to be in that wide receiver room, and he can poke his head in the quarterback's room and then go poke his head in the running back's room, the offensive line room. Sort of my dream, but I know this isn't going to happen. I would love to see Dirk Cutter call the plays in between the 20s.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like give him that 60 yards, and then when the Bucs get in the red zone, let Monken call the plays. Because how, we were, what did Fish say when he was on? We were 8th in the league in getting the red zone, but as far as like red zone scoring, we were like somewhere
29th,
in like the
I think we were
red
down
zone. No, red zone scoring.
Yeah,
red zone scoring, we were down like in the the high 30s, low 20s, like it was bad. But as far as you're getting there, Cutter could get us there. He just couldn't get us in the end zone.
Right.
Or you could say it was shooting yourselves in the foot and execution over play calling, blah, 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 blah. But so honestly, I like it. I'm excited for it. Sort of take some of the things off of Monken's plate. So sort of take a little bit of the shackles off him and see what he can do.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't see this being a super big change for what's going on. I mean, this is more of a promotion for Skylar Fulton than it is,
for Todd Monken.
You're right. I mean, it may have that effect of just Todd doesn't have to worry about the wide receivers, especially. And the words you keep hearing from everyone else is he's now a second set of eyes for Dirk Cutter.
Right.
Maybe he'll be up in the booth with sitting
cool.
next to Mike Smith or something. Who knows? I don't know. I don't know how much this is going to help the team. I certainly don't think it's going to hurt the team. I have never understood, I'll be honest with you, Ren, I've never understood the idea of having somebody who is quote unquote a coordinator who doesn't call plays. And I know that lots of teams have it, and I know that you see that all the time, but I don't understand why they're called a coordinator if they're not the one who calls the plays. To me, that's part of the job description of being a coordinator. And then what I want my head coach doing is being the guy who's telling the coordinator, hey, like I want the head coach coaching the coordinator and letting the coordinator, do his job, not the other way around. But that's just me. That's just the way I think it should work. I know lots of teams do it in a different way. I don't know. I just don't see this being that huge of a move, and I hope that it'll do good for the team. I just don't see it making that much of a difference.
Yeah, I think it could make a big difference. I don't think it will. But like you said, it's not a huge. It's nothing. Stop the presses. But I think it's a move in the right direction. Like I said, I like it. But you're right. It's nothing to start talking about playoffs again. That's for sure.
Right. Let's save that talk for later. Let's see the team win.
12-4. Here we come.
Yeah. No, let's see the team win first. Scoring 50 points a game. Let's make everybody cringe. All right, Ren. Well, that is actually going to wrap us up as far as the news and everything that we have there. We're going to take a break here, and when we come back, we've got an iTunes review, Ren, to read. We'll go through that. We've got an email and some questions to go through. We'll handle that here on the other side of this break. Welcome back to the Pewtercast, and now it is time to turn to what some of your fellow fans are saying out there. We always start off this section, Ren, by looking over to iTunes, and we have a couple of new ratings, but we had one new review came in.
It's been a hot minute.
It's been a while since a new review. A couple of, it looks like there were 5-star ratings that came in, but this review comes in from JG902. Also gives us a 5-star rating. It says it's for Buccaneer fanatics. Fun conversation between two Buccaneer fans who are easy to relate to. Ren provides the insight of a longtime fan who gets the oft-forgotten word, patience. Nobody knows the trouble we've seen. Thank you, JG902.
Maybe you should have read that before I went on my little tirades tonight.
Showing patience.
Yeah, showing patience. Whoopsie.
Damn it, Ira. Damn it, Gerald.
And one more thing.
I hate everybody. No.
Yeah, well, thanks, man. Yeah, that's I appreciate that. And, I guess that's pretty much sort of the ultimate goal that we're trying to do, right? Be relatable with Bucs fans. It is a podcast by the fans for the fans.
That's right. That's absolutely what this is. We are certainly that's the thing that, Ren, no matter where we go, no matter what we do, I want this show to make sure that it maintains is the fan aspect of it. That it doesn't become perfunctory or doesn't become, for as much as we talk about media access or whatever, that's really for the fans. That's for us to be able to do what we do as fans, to be able to get stuff out for the fans. But,
we have no problem running with a narrative without two sources verifying it.
But we're going to make sure that it's, we'll discuss the narrative, before we put out there. But anyway, but thank you definitely, JG902. And if you would like to leave us an iTunes review, we would love to be able to read that on air. All you got to do is go over to iTunes, search for us in the podcast app, and leave us a rating. We always prefer the 5-star kind. Leave us a review, and we'll make sure that we read that on the next episode of the Pewter Cast, and would love to do that. So thank you to everybody over there. Pretty good rating, Ren. We're still sitting at a 5.0 for our
nice.
I guess the average for what we are. So people still seem to like the show out there, which is great. And thank you, and to all the new listeners who's jumped in. Just gonna maybe here towards the end of the season or even since the season has ended. Welcome to you guys. Please like and subscribe. We are on all the major platforms out there: iTunes, Podcast Addict, Podbean, Google Play, iHeartRadio, all those fun places. And if there's a way to rate or review us, it really just helps other people find us. That's really the whole purpose of that is helping others. The more you rate, the more we review, the more that percolates us up to the top when people are searching for Buccaneers related podcasts. All right, Ren, we had a question come in to us from Twitter from our good buddy Chef Aaron.
Uh-oh.
Mm-hmm. And this is an interesting question, I find, coming off of the Patriots AFC Championship game against the Jaguars, but also coming right off the Super Bowl loss. As well. And here's what Chef said. It's a real simple question. I think it's a fun one for discussion. He says, do you believe in the notion of a referee fixing the game?
No, I don't.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Sorry.
No, it's all right. No. I told Chef, I was like, that question deserves more than 280 character answer on Twitter. And Ren says, no.
Apparently it doesn't. No, I get, no, I do not. I don't think the Patriots, I don't think the referees were trying to pull for the Patriots. Mm-hmm. You saw some of those pictures, like you take a still shot of it and, what was the ref was sort of like, look like he was celebrating with all the Patriots after a touchdown. But if you watched it live, like the Patriots and who was it? The Steelers game?
Jaguars.
Was it the Jaguars game or was it the Steelers game? Anyway, okay, so I don't know if they played the Steelers. Anyway, because they didn't. The Jaguars game, sort of like a couple of a Patriot and a Jaguar were getting into it after the touchdown, and the ref came in and sort of separated them, and then it looked like the Patriot player was like, hey, man, it's all good, we're just, whatever, everything's cool. And, like, the ref was joking back, like, smiling, like, yeah, it's my job. I'm just clearing it up. But the angle of the shot was taken. There were Patriot guys coming over to celebrate with the player that the ref was talking to, and he's smiling, and it's like a second snapshot. It looks like there's 3 Patriots there, and the ref has this huge grin on his face. They're standing in the end zone. So, has it happened before? Yeah. I don't think there's been documented cases in the National Football League. I know it's been documented in the NBA. There's been a few scandals I believe in college basketball with players shaving points. Things like that. But
baseball, we had a baseball, Pete Rose and all that stuff.
Yeah, but with Pete Rose, and I don't know if it's true or not, but he always said I never bet on my team, which is sort of like the ultimate out. And probably the best way to, if you think in the back of your mind you ever get caught, you can be like, look, man, I never bet on my team. So
my team, right? Yeah.
I always tried to manage to win. Then you can't take any of his decisions as a manager into question. But no, I don't think so. No, I'm not a real big conspiracy theorist guy, mostly because the people that talk about it are cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. It's not so much that like you know what, that kind of is a possibility, but usually the people that, like I said, present these conspiracy theories are like whack-a-doodle. I'm sort of on the fence if we went to the moon or not, to be honest. But then you hear Dan Aykroyd talk about it, and you're like, just you're not the guy to sort of spearhead this conversation for the people think that we did not land on the moon. So anyway,
things I never knew about Ren, but okay.
Yeah, well, yeah. I don't know. I think it's very feasible that that it was staged, just because we're trying to win the space race. Anyway, it doesn't matter. And as far as the annals of history, it really doesn't matter either way if we ever went to the moon or not. That first time, I should say. Anyway, I'm going to get off that. No, I do not believe that NFL referees are trying to throw a game or getting involved in a game. I think it's just, when it goes against your team, it seems like if you're a hardcore fan, a diehard, like you feel like all the calls go against you. Like you can't remember one time a call went your way, and then so it's just the way it is. So no, I do not.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Really, 100%. And I mean, truth be told, if you believe that there is referee tampering in a game, if that's even a question mark, that undermines the entire notion of what an unbiased referee is. Now make no mistake, refs make bad calls all the time. Do I think that there are sometimes when a ref might be biased, like an individual referee might be biased? Yeah, probably. Is it towards a particular team, or is it because they've been bought off? No. I mean, it may be. Look, these referees are human too, right? It's quite possible that a referee might have had a fight with his wife that day and didn't like the way this player talked to him the last time, so he's gonna call that one a little harder than he would otherwise. But is it because the referee has fixed the game? No, I just don't believe that. And if that's the case, then that needs to be a situation that gets dealt with immediately and publicly. But it truthfully, it just undermines the whole notion of what a referee is. I mean, it undermines any kind of confidence we can have in it. Now, I will say this. I don't know if anyone ever out there has tried to referee. I'm sure several people have. I have, and I know that I couldn't do it. Everything happens so fast and so quick, and you've got to process that information in your brain of what you think you just saw, replay it in your head so that you know that you're making the right call, and then run it up against the rule book and make sure that you're throwing the flag or not throwing the flag for the right reason. And by the way, you have less than half a second to do that. And no matter what call you make, half of the stadium is going to hate whatever you just said, if it's anywhere near controversial. So, for me, I don't want that kind of responsibility. Like, I don't want to be a referee because I wouldn't be good at that. And I probably, I can be a little bit of a pushover when it comes to that. Like, don't hate me. No, okay, I'll call it better your way. But no, I think that referees, and we hear about this, right? Particularly with Mike Evans. We heard about this with Mike Evans a couple years ago. Oh, we know that this player complains a lot whenever something happens, or watch this player because they do this. And then that player tends to get, they don't get as much grace as, say, another player does.
Right.
So, you certainly see that. The other thing, too, into what you were saying of the refs getting chummy with the players, like on one level, like these guys work together, right? I mean, you're in the league. Tom Brady's been in the league for how many years now? 17 years, going on 20 years, 42 years. I don't know. Wasn't he Bart Starr's like clipboard guy?
He was Bart Starr's backup.
Yeah,
for a couple of years.
They've been around for a while. Well, guess what? After so many years, you're going to have seen the same referees again and again and again. Like, they may not be friends, but they get to know each other, right?
Yeah, and it would behoove players to be friendly to the referees.
Sure, and the referees don't have to be assholeish to these guys. They can. Hey, whatever, and still call a game, fairly down the middle. So, I'm not gonna put all of that together and just say, referees fix the game. No, listen, I think there's bad calls. I think there are sometimes even biased calls, but I don't think it's fixed. And if you truly, and by you, what I mean is as a coach or a club, truly suspected that a referee had been paid to call a game in a certain way, that would be a very, very serious accusation that I think a club should take seriously if they're going to make that kind of an accusation, because that's getting at the integrity of what a referee is.
Yeah, it's just not worth it anymore, the amount of money these guys make. And I'm talking about the referees. I'm sure they make a really nice salary. I know this was the first time or the first year that the NFL
it's like about $70,000.
Right, but for years, they all had other jobs. Like, these guys were doctors and lawyers. It wasn't like Joe school bus driver, and then where being paid off by, quote unquote, the mob would really be this huge payday. To be able to get somebody to throw a game, like, they have to be in some type of peril, and usually it's financial. It's they've gotten in over their head, or maybe they have some huge medical bills. And they only make like $26,000 a year. That's why the Black Sox all threw the game, back in the 1919 Baseball World Series, because these guys were making like $2,700 a year. And they're away. I'll give you $13,000 to throw the game. Let's see, that would take me that would take me about 5 years to make. Yeah, I'll do that. But now, especially with what the penalty would be. I mean, not only the integrity of the game, but it would totally undermine the Vegas betting system. And people would quit betting in droves if, like, this scandal came out, like, hey, this referee's been throwing games for 10 years. And, basketball right now is actually making this huge push to make gambling on basketball, like, legal in all 48, the United States, continental United States. And why is because it will make them a lot of money. And that's the bottom dollar. So if you were someone, a referee that got caught like that, like, they would just put you in jail and never let you out. So I don't really think the penalty I don't think there's really how much money would it have to.
Well, to answer your question, I just looked it up. The average NFL referee's salary is $173,000, and that was in 2013. The average NFL salary for a referee is supposed to be around $201,000 a year by the year 2019.
Yeah,
so we're probably in the 190s right now, if I had to guess.
Yeah, so you can live off that. Obviously,
yeah, $10,000 to throw a game, or $25,000.
That's right.
If you make $200,000 a year, how much money do you need to put your
freedom,
your thing at risk?
Yeah,
I mean, it better be in $100,000 at least if you're going to put your career at risk.
It has to be in the
millions. Yeah, and nobody's going to pay that to throw a game. I mean, maybe one of the championship games or something. I'm going to just lean on it's just bad officiating. Murky rules.
Yeah.
Just
survive the ground.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Just stupid stuff like that. The one thing that baffles me right now about the NFL is how come the guy who's making the call goes over and watches something on a little teeny tiny monitor when we've got a big, huge crystal clear HD Jumbotron where you can clearly see what just happened.
And why is he watching it anyway? Because he's not making the call.
Right. Right.
Normally it's the guy in New York. Apparently tonight they were actually on site. But normally it's, like all that goes through the big super center, NFL super center in New York. Mm-hmm. And why does he need to, I guess so they could be on the same page what they're looking at. But it doesn't really matter because whatever the guy in New York says is going to be
what they go. Yeah.
Yeah, just put the headsets on and stand there.
Yeah, and we saw that. We saw that in one of our games this year. I think it was one of the plays with O.J. Howard. I forget which game it was in. But the refs were actually going to call it one way, and the people in New York called into the refs and forced them to change the call. Because it was like, did he turn into a runner or not turn into a runner?
Targeting and ended up being a fumble.
Yeah. So, it's like I say, I would see it just more as bad officiating, not so much fixing a game.
Yeah, so. like you said, the amount they get paid, the quality of life they have as an NFL referee is enough to sort of put a bugaboo on somebody wanting to win. Speaking of gambling, there was some guy that made 2 separate $1 million bets on the Eagles.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So he won a $1 million bet twice.
Interesting.
Yeah, I wonder what that payout was.
I don't know. I bet you're looking it up.
No,
okay.
I don't.
Yeah, I don't know how to do that.
I don't know enough.
I mean, to have $2 million to just put up as a bet though is crazy to me. But
apparently he won it all on. He kept parlaying like the World Series a couple years ago or something. That's where he made all his money. Like he just got on a hot streak and just kept like rolling it over.
Wow. Well, good for him. That's good for him.
It's one way to do it.
All right. Well, Chef, thank you so much for your question. We do have one email to get to, Ren, and this one comes in from our friend Chris from Alaska.
There we go.
Who's written in a few times. He says, hello, it's been a cold week here in Alaska with average temperatures at 0 degrees. Chris, I have one word for you. Move. Florida is warm.
Florida's hot.
But he says,
tell people.
Being in the military, so I guess he's up there for military. Being in the military, they're required to do PT at 6:30 in the morning and not in fun weather to run in. He says, the good news is this is my last winter here, and he heads to D.C. in September. Chris, let me take this opportunity. I don't think I ever realized that you were in the military. Thank you for your service, sir.
Same.
He goes on to say, he says, I have a few questions this week. The first one that comes to mind is Todd Monken's promotion to this walk-around offensive coordinator. What would his roles be? Last year, I kind of assumed that that's what Monken was coming up with game plans and presenting them to Cutter. Is that necessarily true? Will that be his role this year? I'm looking forward to see what he'll bring to the table. I'm sure it will help Cutter a lot, especially with managing the team as a whole. We covered that a little bit, but this whole idea of being a walk-around offensive coordinator. I think the walk-around part, Ren, might be having more to do with being in practice. Because I really do picture Monken being up in the booth during the games. But he doesn't have to be just limited to the wide receivers during practice or in the game.
Or the game. Yeah. Exactly. Mm-hmm. And from what I learned listening to Dirk Cutter's call-in show last year was that quite a few people put together an offensive game plan. Mm-hmm. And then they all come together and then they weigh the pros and cons and they decide what to do. And of course, Dirk Cutter gets the ultimate say so. And then that's how they come up with their game plan. Mm-hmm. I sort of mentioned before, I think it gives Monken more time to come up with a game plan when you're not tied to you're not tied to a position group and having to watch film and teaching those guys and go over this and showing them that. So while all these guys are in meetings, Monken can be because Cutter's going to be in the quarterback room.
Sure.
So Monken can be up in his office or in the film room and devising, sort of get a head start on coming up with a game plan every week.
Yeah, and I wonder if and I could see this being a change. Where Monken is having to worry about the wide receivers and talking to the wide receivers and various things like that. If he's in Cutter's ear, because we know that Cutter's going to maintain the play calling
Right.
If you think that this means Cutter's giving up play calling, get that out of your head. That's not what this means at all. But what it really could mean is that Monken, he's watching the game, he's looking at it through the eyes of a coordinator, which means he's looking at it through the eyes of a play caller, and he might be that second voice in Dirk's ear of saying, "Hey, Dirk, why don't we try this play, or why don't we move to this play here?" Just being that second set of eyes, right? That second pair of eyes. Ultimately, the choice is going to come down to Cutter. But I don't know if that would be helpful or if that would just be adding confusion. When you're trying to figure out what the next play is. Like I could see that going either way. But that would be one thing that I could see would actually, not just in coming up with a game plan, but in a game time situation. Being that extra, hey, take a timeout here, or let's move to a pass play here, or move to a let's go for it here, or whatever. That would be another thing that I think could change that Monken might be able to do.
Not to interrupt, have you gone on Twitter lately?
No.
I sort of peeked at it. Apparently, which should come to surprise to absolutely nobody. Philly's going bonkers, as in Escape from New York, Armageddon bonkers. Here's a tweet from Jenna Lane. Quote, that people are listening to police scanners. Remember Craig in Vegas? Of course you remember Craig in Vegas. He said something. He said, Craig in Vegas says, listening to police scanner in Philly sounds like a war's going on. R.I.P. Philly. Jenna Lane tweets, and she quotes this. She got this off the police scanner. They're having lots of issues downtown. They just threw a light pole through an AC Moore window.
Oh, no.
It's like they ripped the light. And I'm watching a video of these people ripping down a street light, with a I don't know if it's a rope that they tied around it, but yeah, there's probably 500 people, and these guys are they're the street lights out of the ground, and I don't know what they're doing with it, but man.
Well, this can only help because apparently Bud Light says that it is going to come through with a promise. Representatives will be at taverns all along the Eagles parade route to give each fan who's 21 and older a free Bud Light. That should help that whole situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hashtag
when is that parade? Is it tomorrow?
Probably.
Because if it's tomorrow, people are just going to wake up and sort of dust themselves off and stand up.
They'll just stand up where they are. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I'm looking. I'm from Kentucky, man, and when when the Wildcats win.
Talking about basketball, right?
Yeah, I'm talking about basketball, but there's some pretty crazy stuff that happens there. So, anyway. All right. Back to our email here.
Yeah, sorry.
This one is addressing you, Ren. He says, Ren, Levante David, in my eye, he's going back to our episode about the Pewtercast Award show, Ren.
Okay.
He says, Ren, Levante David, in my eyes, was clutch. He had a few fumbles that helped the team get back into games or even win a game or two. I remember you had a little bit of issue with the idea that Levante was a clutch player of the year.
They only won 5. Which game or two did
he doesn't specify.
Bold statement there, Chris.
Yeah.
Was that it? Well,
yeah, that's all he says. That's all he says.
If you think Levante David was clutch, I do not. I still have an issue with it. I just do. And if you think he is, then that's fine. I know I'm not gonna say you're wrong, even though you are. I'm not gonna say that, but you can have your opinion,
sure,
even though it's wrong.
And I mean, truthfully, Ren, it's actually, I think this points out to me what I think is one of the beauties of a fan voted award is everybody brings their own criteria to it. There is no, you bring your own criteria to it and figure out, was Levante clutch or not? Was he that? Was he a returning player of the year? Was he a defensive player of the year? I think those we certainly agreed on, but so that's what he says there. All right, moving on. He says, I'm really looking forward to free agency and to the draft. In my opinion, the Bucs' offensive holes can be fixed mostly through free agency and maybe spend a pick or two in the draft for an offensive lineman or a running back. What I would do with the running back position is cut ties with Martin and Rodgers, which is like $8 million in cap space. don't re-sign Sims. I think this team should keep 3 running backs on the roster, with Barber being 1, Dion Lewis, and then draft a running back. Dion Lewis, I think you could get for about $4 million a year. What are your thoughts about what the Bucs should do at the running back position, and do you think Dion Lewis will command more money?
Well, I don't know what Dion Lewis is going to command. If I was Dion Lewis and the Patriots wanted me back, I would just stay there. I think he's a dangerous weapon. Although I think Philly, Chris Collinsworth tonight said it was surprising that they put Jenkins on Lewis instead of Gronk, and it worked wonders in the first half. I almost bit him in the butt in the second half, but it worked wonders in that first half. So anyway, what I'm saying is, if I was Dion Lewis, I wouldn't leave the Patriots. I mean, why? I mean, you're there to win championships. You're going to be a key part. I think he's our most versatile offensive player. He's like Charles Sims on steroids. So I don't know what he's going to, I guess what am I trying to say? What he's going to demand as far as what his market value will be. I am a little bit scared of Dion Lewis if he comes to the Bucs, if they will figure out how to use him properly. That's sort of a concern. But as far as the running back position overall, I tweeted about this not a long time ago, but a while ago to Tom Berenger, sort of when the season just ended and the Bucs Twitter had sort of turned to free agency in the draft, pretty much right after the Saints game. And I'm sort of in agreement with what Peter Report is saying, is like, get 2 backs in free agency and draft 1.
Yeah.
And that's the way, it could be like a Carlos Hyde, it could be LeGarrette Blount, it could be Lewis, but bring in McKinnon from Minnesota. But I think you need to bring in 2. I do think the Bucs are going to try to bring Charles Sims back. I don't have a problem with that. But Martin's gone. That's probably the biggest foregone conclusion there is. So
honestly, Rodgers is likely gone. Though I still say I think I would not be surprised if they keep him through camp.
Right.
And see what he can do in camp. Yeah. If he proves himself in camp, then great, fine, so be it. But most likely he's back for camp body status.
Yeah, he's not going to prove himself in camp. If they get 2 free agents and a draft, which I think they will and should do, then now and if you bring Charles Sims back, now you're at 5 backs with Peyton Barber. I think the Bucs, which I think it's a good idea as far as depth-wise to have Rodgers in camp, but I think is doing him a solid is they're probably going to give him the choice. They're like, look, you're not going to make the team. Do you want us to let us go now, or do you want to, and get out on the free agent, or do you want us to keep you around through camp and, you sharpen your skills and then get released later? Maybe you can pick up somewhere else. Like, which one do you want to do? As far as being, the ruthless GM, keep him around till the end, for the 3rd preseason game, 4th preseason game, and then let him loose. But since he has such a history with Cutter from Atlanta, Mike Smith as well, they might just do him a solid and be like, hey, man, what do you want to do? You want us to release you now or release you later?
Yeah, I could see all of that happening. And, I don't know what Dion Lewis is going to command.
Yeah, that's whatever. I'm not there yet.
I don't think the Bucs would be mistaken to re-sign Sims. Whatever. I think the bigger question mark, honestly, with the holes as far as the offense goes, is going to be the offensive line. And, Chris suggests, picking up an offensive lineman in the draft, spend a pick or 2 in the draft for an offensive lineman or a running back. Sure, fine, if you want to do that, at least for the offensive lineman. The truth is, though, unless you find a gem like another Ali Marpet, if you're not talking about a top, one of your top 3 rounds, if you're talking about a day 1, day 2 offensive lineman, that's where your value is going to come into it. But we have so many other holes around the team, particularly on the defense. I just don't know. I mean, unless it's a special player on the offensive line, I just don't see us spending that high of a draft pick. And if it's going to be less than that, if we're talking now about a day 3 offensive lineman draft pick, we're talking about another Caleb Benenoch type situation where the guy's going to come in, he's not going to play this year, he's going to be a developmental guy, and we'll see where he is in a couple of years. So I'm just not looking to fix holes this year on the offensive line through the draft, unless it happens to be a real special player, which means any holes we have on the offensive line this year are going to have to be fixed in free agency. And, I can't even speculate on who all is going to be free out there and who the Bucs should bring in. I'll just kind of wait to see what they do in that position, and we'll talk about the guy that they actually do wind up bringing in. Though I feel fairly certain we'll definitely see some changes on the offensive line between this year and next year. At least I hope we will. We might not. I don't know. Cutter surprised us with making no moves before. But
it's not Cutter's job.
Fair enough. Well, but we know that they all kind of work in concert together.
Right.
But
right. All the moves are light.
Yeah. You're very, very well said. Yes, that's true. All right.
But I agree with you 100% as far as offensive line. Like, if it's not, Quentin Nelson out of Notre Dame, or possibly that guy out of, is it Texas South Africa? Hernandez. I don't know. He's we'll sort of have a free agency or holes to fill draft show coming up later. But those are the two guys, and I wouldn't take the Hernandez kid in the first. Like, I would wait till the second. If he's still there, I'd think about it. But and Quentin Nelson's getting mocked to the Buccaneers a lot. I don't know if you're familiar with him, Brent, but he's like one of those guys. He's a guard for Notre Dame, and he's one of those guys where you plug and play. Like, he's like sort of he might be the highest graded player in the whole entire draft, but since he's a guard, he's just not going to go number 1. You know what I mean? So,
and that brings up a whole nother discussion, and we'll save this for another show. But I mean, do we ignore our defense in the first round again because we have the ability to pick up a really good special offensive player? The answer might be yes.
The answer is yes, but it all depends on how it falls. Now, if I think like Bradley Chubb, the defensive end from North Carolina State, and Quentin Nelson are both there, they won't be. But if they are, I would really want them to take Bradley Chubb instead of Quentin Nelson.
Sure.
But, as far as offensive line, I'll go back to, what you were saying. Like, yes, I think most of the holes are going to be filled through free agency. And there's some good ones out there, some good guards out there. Like I said, I've done some like little preliminary searches, and especially at the guard center position, there's some places that they can shore up for sure.
Absolutely. Alrighty. He goes on to say and closes up here. He says defense obviously will take much more to fix, and might actually need Harry Potter to cast a spell in order to help them out. In all seriousness, if the Bucs could sign Michael Bennett, that would be a win. We already discussed that. Said you could cut ties with Will Golston, and the reason why is he's not a pass rusher, and teams know that, and when they see him in the game, they could check into a pass play, and 8 out of 10 times it would work. Says I would keep Ayers as a pass rush specialist and keep him healthy and fresh in games. You hope Noah Spence can come back and not have the injury reoccur, so your defensive line would look like McCoy, Bennett, Spence, Ayers, and McDonald should he be re-signed, draft Chubb or Vita Vea. Again, I could be reaching, and I'm in no way a GM or ever will be. However, I have fun playing with these scenarios. The most important thing is to get quality players and not get into cap space hell, especially needing to sign key players in the next few years. Have a good weekend. Go Bucks. Chris, sent from my iPhone.
Well, thanks for the good weekend thing. Yeah, that Vita Vea guy, he's fun to watch. I've watched a few highlights on him, and I wouldn't mind the Bucks maybe reaching for him on 7. But if you listen to the most recent Pewter Report podcast, I think they're right. Like, I think teams have him rated very high, but once he blows up the combine, which I think he will, just like Pewter Report said, you're going to see the NFL draft Twitter sort of bounce him up into the top 10.
And help me out. What position is he? Is he an end or a tackle?
He's a tackle / nose guard, but he played all 3 positions in college, mostly on the interior though. But he did play some snaps at defensive end.
Right. So ideally, he'd be that replacement for Chris Baker if Chris Baker gets released, or
exactly.
Maybe move around. And Chubb is just for clarity, he is a defensive end.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. These two guys are sort of like 1 and 2 at their position, and especially in the Chubb spot, there's a big drop off to sort of the next guy. Mm-hmm. Now there is this kid at LSU named Arden Key, but he's got a lot of question marks. He left the program. He's from LSU. He left the program for a while. He had like a great year, like 2 years ago, and then he didn't sort of live up to his billing. But he's just sort of this athletic freak that it's like, he's just not the cleanest player out there. So taking him 7 would be like a real stretch, and he won't be there in the second round. So that gap between Chubb and Key is so vast. It's like Chubb or nobody at defensive end. And then Veda's clearly the number 1 interior defensive lineman, in my opinion.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. What.
I'm sorry, I didn't answer his question at all. Getting rid of Golston's not going to happen. I think it's a bad idea.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right in theory about Will Golston being on the field and check to a pass play. I don't think that has anything to do, like the percentage of what he said, 8 out of 10 times. I don't think Will Golston has anything to do if the pass play is going to be complete or not. Mm-hmm. Like he's not covering anybody. And it's such a timing thing. Like you saw Philly tonight, the Super Bowl, they had pressure on Tom Brady all night. They sacked him once. Why?
Right.
Because he gets rid of the ball. Like you have to get the quarterback off their first read. That's my new thing. Like if you get them off their first read, then you have a chance to sack him. If you don't, you don't. Like that's all there is. There's going to be some times where there's just going to be a busted play, and some guys going to come free, and the quarterback has nowhere to go with the ball. But that's rare. You got to get him off the first read, have him reset his feet, and that's when you're going to have a chance to bring him down. Mm-hmm. So I think we keep Golston. I think keeping Ayers the pass rusher specialist. I get where you're going. We're keep him healthy, keep him fresh type of deal, but.
I'll tell you, Ayers, the reports coming out about Ayers with the numbers and stuff now that the season is over, it would seem Ayers had a much better year than kind of, I guess, what we might have credited him for him during the season and what the old eyeball test would give him as during the season. That he was actually one of our that's what the numbers are showing, is that he was one of the the better pass rushers that we had as far as putting pressure on the quarterback.
That is correct, but that also doesn't mean that he's any good. You know what I'm saying? It's like, which one's the best bologna sandwich? Well, who gives a shit? They're all fucking bologna sandwiches. So I hear what you're saying. Yes, he did. He did. As far as putting pressure on the quarterback and sacks, he was up there on a really crappy pass rushing team. So it can be upgraded. And a lot of people are sort of counting him out because of how much money he makes. I'm on the fence about it still. If they cut him, I'll understand it. If they keep him, I'll understand it. I really don't have a feeling either way. Like, I'm not like, you got to keep Ayers, I think that's the right thing to do. Or you got to cut Ayers, I think that's the right thing to do. With Will Golston, I think you keep him. I think that's the right thing to do. I'm just hoping he had sort of an off year, bad year. Yeah, so that's where I am with his questions. I don't like the Ayers thing. I don't like the Golston thing. But I do like the Veda and the other things he talked about.
All right. Yeah, I can go with all that. So,
by the way, I like bologna sandwiches, by the way.
His line here, though: McCoy, Bennett, Spence, Ayers, McDonald, and then Chubb or Vita Vea. That is mostly the same the same defensive line we had this year.
Yeah.
Like to me, that almost seems like there's not enough change. Although, I mean, I guess it's hard to count Spence as being in the defensive line this year since he was out for 15 of 16 games.
Right, but that's only two new guys, and I think you're right. They need more than that.
Yeah, I
like keeping Clinton McDonald, but I just think
I like keeping Gerald McCoy
through free agency.
Despite everything we talked about earlier, I want to keep Gerald McCoy. I don't think we should trade him.
Oh God, no.
I'm with you on keeping Clinton McDonald. Ayers, I'm probably a little higher on Ayers than I am on Golston right now, but I don't think Golston's going anywhere. I really don't. Ayers, I would be shocked if they just flat out released him unless they knew that they had somebody else to take his place. So.
If they release Ayers, I don't think they're like upset with Ayers or think that they're like really unhappy with him. Of course, they wanted more production out of him, but he would just be a salary issue.
Thing. Yeah.
Because
we still have him for one more year.
Salary.
Yeah, we still have him for one more year. So it's not I just don't see him letting go of Ayers. So and I don't see him letting go of Golston, which I guess what that means is that a lot of our defensive line is still in line to come back. It's just a matter of, what is that piece or two? And maybe that's really all the defensive line really needs is one or two pieces. Though how that's possible, I don't understand because
it's not. They're just going to be keeping Clinton McDonald and keeping, Robert Ayers and keeping Will Golston. But I'm not saying any of those guys should start.
It's true. And the defensive line rotates a lot. So that is very true. We still could use another 3 or 4 guys because you still have like that Ryan Russell and the Silver Salinga and the Stevie T, and you have those guys who are the rotational guys that come through that okay, let me ask you this: if you had to choose between Ayers and Golston and Salinga and Russell, which duo are you keeping?
Ayers and Golston.
Of course you are.
Without doubt.
Right. So, and that would be, I guess, maybe something if we get to this. Instead of picking on Ayers and Golston, let's pick on Russell and Salinga. Let's upgrade those two before we try to upgrade these two.
Yeah, and I know when we did sort of our love him or leave him, I think we should keep, Ryan Russell, and there was another guy that, got like 2 sacks. Like, we should keep that guy too.
Will Clark.
But I'm just talking like the 90-man roster.
Sure.
Like, what I would like to see is sort of what I just talked about is Golston and Ayers sort of taking those guys' spots, and the new guys become like the starters.
The big guys, sure.
Like a McCoy / Veda / Chubb, hopefully. Golston will probably start on rundowns, and then gets another defensive end in free agency, and then keep Noah Spence for as what he's meant to be as a third down rush specialist, and then use Ayers and Stevie T as rotational guys and McDonald as rotational guys. Like I think that's a big upgrade for what we had.
That'd be sure. I mean, if your starters get reduced to rotational guys because your new starters are that much better, that's not a bad trade out. Even with the defensive line that we had this past year. So, all right. Anyway, well, that is going to wrap that up, Chris. Thank you so much for your email and to everyone who sent in questions, emails, reviews. Make sure you guys go back and do that. We're in as we kind of round the corner here. Like we've mentioned a few times, so coming out here in about a week will be our Love 'Em and Leave 'Em show. This will be out. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another one of these kind of recap shows of, just kind of all the news that have come out about our beloved Buccaneers. If you haven't listened to it yet, the Pewtercast Awards show, that is out. You can go download that. That should just be one episode back in your podcast feed. Find out all the people who won. It was a fun show, Ren. We got the trophies. Those are getting out to the engravers, and so we'll get those out into the hands of the winners here very, very soon. But with that, Ren, I'll toss it over to you, man. Any final thoughts, and where can people find you out there on the internet?
Yeah, 2 things. Do you listen to the Locked On NFL Draft podcast that Trevor does?
I do not.
Sorry, that was a dumb question. What was I thinking? You hate the draft. Sorry. Anyway, it's a Locked On, so you got you do it 5 days a week all year round.
And Trevor's doing it?
He's been doing it since Luke Eastersting left to go to USA Today when doing the draft wire. He tried to do both.
This is like for the NFL draft. This isn't just for Tampa Bay. Like this is for everybody.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, everybody.
Okay, I didn't know that. Cool.
Yeah, he's been doing it for a few months now, a while. Pretty much But I don't know. He knows. But anyway, when I sent that tweet out, congratulating Trevor for winning, best Bucs media personality, his co-host kind of razzing him, giving him some crap about it. He's like, hey, and with me as always, Trevor Sikkema, he called the most popular. He was like the most popular because he saw it on Twitter and picked up on it and was giving him some crap about it. So I thought that was pretty funny. That was just talking about, Trevor, you're even though he's probably not listening, you're Pewdie. Are we not doing the Pewdies?
Who, us?
Yeah. Are we not calling them the Pewdies? I know that I don't think. I mean, I shouldn't say I know. I don't think you're a fan of calling.
I don't love that name, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. We don't have a special name yet, but I'm not gonna. Yeah, I'm.
You're not going to lead the charge to dump the Pewdies?
No, but I'm not going to propagate it if I can help it either.
But I will never call them the Pewdies.
Right.
Fair enough. Anyway, Trevor, your Pewdie is on its way. And secondly,
the mini Lombardi.
I feel like I went back-to-back rants, and that's just sort of how the show fell. Mm-hmm. I always like to try to be more even keel, but those two things got on my collar, so I just want people to know. I want to reiterate once again that I'm glad Gerald McCoy's here. I think he's a hell of a player. I don't want us to trade him, and I don't think he deserves the hate that he gets. Just I've laid out my reasons why I understand why people might not like him as a Buccaneer. And then the Ira content. I stand by that. I had nothing against Ira as a person. I just don't think he's the right guy for the job. And I've laid out my sort of my argument for that. But if you want to yell at me or congratulate me on either of those takes, you can find me on Twitter at Rendax, REN_DAXT. I'm always down to talk Buccaneers football.
And if you guys want to find me, you can find me at Brent Allen Live across all the social medias out there. And if you want to get in touch with the show, you can do that at the Pewtercast on Twitter at facebook.com/the Pewtercast. Go over there, like us, like our page, follow us and what we've got going on over there. Or you can send us an email, as our friend Chris did earlier today, to thepewtercast@gmail.com. We'll make sure that we get that read on our next episode. With that, Ren, thank you so much for your time tonight, for being here on the show. I guess I'm signing off like you're a guest. You're not. You're my co-host. So
pleasure to be here. Yeah. I always have fun when I'm on. I really do.
Hey, why don't you come back
anytime.
sometime? We'll do this again. What do you think?
I'm going to hold you to that.
All right. I think we can make that happen. I don't know why I went that way. But, hey, whatever. I want to say thanks to everybody else who's been tuning in and listening. You guys, the fans, you really make this worth it. Hey, listen, we'll sign off here saying, as we always do, go Bucs.